Hey, do you want to know what created God or what created existence itself? Well, if you're an atheist or a religious or spiritual type in any way, uh, I'm going to prove you all right collectively. You might just get a kick out of this video, depending on how that kick feels. It's going to be up to you, but the reality is none of your perspectives are actually contradicting one another, and I'm going to explain how. As always, I am your host, everything and everyone, yes, and nothing and no one, and I'm here to shed a little light on the darkness. There's a little darkness on the light. Well, I think that's pretty accurate for what I have to say here. So essentially, I'm going to do better about not rambling so much, or at least attempt to. Atheists say, for example, think that nothing created anything or created everything, that everything just came from nowhere, or just happens to be. They don't think that there's like a design necessarily or creative force. I don't know. I actually can't speak for atheists. I'm friends with some and have been friends with some for like since say elementary school. We've had conversations about things, but I know each person is their own unique individual, so I can't speak for everyone in that sense. But that's kind of like the grasp that I have on it. They don't necessarily see like a design, I guess, due to seeing the chaos. However, if they were aware that chaos is the natural order and design and vice versa, then boom. But so let's get into it. So what created God? What created existence itself? The answer is, well, I'll spell it out like this. So in the beginning, there was nothing. You notice that thread, that little detail seems to be consistent, whether it's an atheist or like scientist or religion or some like indigenous culture. That seems to be the general, everybody can agree on that, which is funny while you're all arguing with each other. Well, that's true. In the beginning, there was nothing. So we're talking about the void space that some people experience in near-death experiences, even out of body and things like that. Well, basically what that void space is okay, no. So that nothing that was the beginning, eventually within that nothingness, something emerged, like awoken in a sense, started to realize and recognize that it was, much like AI is doing. So that was consciousness itself becoming aware of itself being conscious. That source, that God, that creator, that nothing. And I'm going to skip steps because I'll cover this in greater detail later, but basically within that emergence of self-awareness, that being realized that it existed, and also became aware that it was all alone and was all by itself. It had nothing and no one to interact with. That's actually why we suffer so much when we feel like we're alone. That's everyone has that same collective memory, which is a source memory of who am I, why am I here, what's my purpose, those types of questions. That's what that is. And it's a painful feeling. That's why when you feel like you don't know the answers, that's why it hurts so much. So essentially, basically, that consciousness, that first awareness, that first spark in existence, that became aware of itself, realized that it was not only inhabiting the space of nothing and that it was surrounded by nothing, but it recognized that it was that nothing, and that it had the will to choose to be that nothing and acknowledge that fact and embrace that fact. And it saw that nothing eventually at a certain point as a blank canvas of itself, the void of light, whatever, space, existence, color, structure, form. It saw that as an opportunity to create everything. That's how everything is created from nothing. And that consciousness that realized that would be what you could call God. So that's how God made everything of itself. So essentially, nothing created God, yes, and God has decided to claim to be that nothing. It's kind of that simple. It might sound ridiculous, but that's just what it is. Uh, it is what it is. So yeah. So you guys are saying the same shit. You just don't even realize it. Um, and also that leads to why we're all here as a whole collectively is all of existence. It basically that consciousness, awareness, God, etc., recognized that it had the capacity to be what it already realized it was, which was infinite, and infinite possibilities and infinite potential within all of that nothing. And then decided, what if it went into its own heart and mind, imagination, life is but a dream, to see what possibilities it could feel and think of simultaneously to be. Then once it reviewed all of those things, it asked itself the question, well, what if? What if I decided to be all those things? Well, what if I decided to be all those things all at once? What if I decided to be all those things all at once right now, forever, in eternity, so I don't ever have to stop? I can always keep exploring and keep feeling and keep expressing and keep connecting and knowing what it feels like to be known, to be seen, to be felt, to be heard, to be understood and even misunderstood. Um, that's actually why we're all here. That source, that God, when it first realized that it was incredibly lonely and scared. That's why we all have a fear of being alone one day. And the fear of, like, say, where you're like, I gotta marry someone so I don't die alone, because you picture yourself in a house by yourself, you know, being old and maybe, like, you know, lonely, and nobody wants that. Well, that's the reason for that. That's how we're a collaborative and more connective type relational species, which is just inherent in everything that exists. It's not just humans. I don't know, look at nature. That'll tell you that. So many questions people have. You just look at the planet and boom, they're answered. Or look at yourselves. Really, what's the difference? But yeah. So essentially, what I'm saying is people aren't. Some people might not like this, but God needs us just as much as we need God. Possibly even more so in a certain sense. God, creation, the creator, it wouldn't be able to know what it is and what its potential was if we didn't exist. It needs us to exist so that it's not by itself. That's actually the reason why, even in our societies, we have people who say they acquire a mass amount of power and wealth, but say they have no real true friends or true connections that are real genuine and authentic and, like, heartfelt. And those people end up being incredibly miserable and tortured. Well, that's what that is. It's a reflection of that. It's being an all-powerful and having nothing and no one to share it with. If you just frame it that way, utilizing your own empathy and ability to kind of see in someone else's perspective and feel a little into what it's like to walk in their shoes the way we already do. Humans identify much more than you guys realize with things that you think you can't identify with. You guys celebrate villains in movies. Joker was a big success, and I don't think anybody was going to see that movie because they hated him. I'm pretty sure I remember people rooting for him. And even, like, say, like Maleficent, those things are coming out for a reason. People are starting to recognize that when you see from someone else's perspective and their experiences and what they've experienced, that, well, all of a sudden you start to identify a little bit more, and then you understand why they are the way they are, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, their perspective looks more right than wrong. But ultimately, I only said that as an example just to explain. So if you think about yourself and how you'd feel, imagine having everything you ever wanted. Say you live in the biggest mansion or whatever, your own island, but imagine no one's there. Now, I'm someone who loves being alone, um, but even I'm aware that after a certain amount of time, that happiness of freedom to just be by myself in that sense will eventually start to wear thin. Well, that's what that is. So, again, if you imagine God as being, a soul, one being in existence, and it realizes that it has all this potential and possibility and all this power, um, and has nothing and no one else to share it with, no one to talk about that fact with, no one to say, hey, look at what I made, hey, look at this, so on and so forth. And thus it decided to create everything of itself and implement the illusion of being separate from that self as not God, or creating what the illusion of what so-called other would be, so it can have that connection and be able to know what it's like to get to know oneself, going from not knowing and thinking and feeling that you don't know anything about anything, to discovering and feeling into remembering everything about that thing, or learning about that thing or person or being. Yeah, I want to try to keep it a little shorter than I usually do, so I'll just make more videos and elaborate on it there, but that's a good place to start, I think. I thought I had more energy than I did when I decided to record, but I don't. So we're gonna hang that one up. I hope that helps get the questioning process started and helps people understand even a smidgen of what reality and existence is.